Finally, a defund movement Republicans can get behind. Senator Marsha Blackburn's proposing that Uncle Sam finally cut off federal funding for NPR after it got exposed as just another arm of the DNC. Get this, $500 million of your money goes to a corporation that helps support the liberal outlet. Big Bird over at PBS gets some of that dough too, but that's another story. Just today, the senior editor at NPR who blew the whistle on the bias resigned after they suspended him for telling the truth. He says that he just can't work for the company's new ultra-woke CEO, Catherine Maher. Conservatives having a field day, exposing her old left-wing tweets. She called Donald Trump a racist. She says she's a proud Hillary supporter, thinks white silence is complicity, and said it's hard to be mad about the George Floyd riots that caused billions in damage. She's also confused about the truth.
Our reverence for the truth might be a distraction that's getting in the way of finding common ground and getting things done.
Dana Perino.
Yes.
What do you think of this new CEO?
Well, I think one of the things we've learned from here is never accept an invitation to give a TED Talk. That is number one. Her tweets are absolutely wild. And I've been a longtime listener of NPR, but it's dropped off in recent years, much as other people. For example, from Uri Berliner's original piece, in 2011, way back when, okay, that's when the five started, in 2011, the NPR audience tilted a little bit to the left, but it was pretty much kind of down the middle. 26% described themselves as conservative, 23% as middle of the road, 37% as liberal. By 2023, last year, it was completely different. Only 11% said they were conservative, 21% middle of the road, and 67% of NPR listeners were liberal. So, to me, NPR has lost the greater public's trust. And Uri Berliner, I think they probably did have to let him go. I think he was probably at that point knew that it was coming. And she, though, has defended her old tweets by saying in America, everyone has a right to free speech, except for Uri Berliner. He didn't have one. And instead of, also the other thing is, instead of saying, you know, he makes some points, we're going to take a look at them. Instead, they're just like going straight ahead, and they'll call anybody who doesn't support them anymore for their funding, whatever they're going to call them. I have defended NPR for years, but I'm out.
Oh, Dana's a defunder.
I'm out.
Are you a defunder too?
No, and I have an issue with the word, and I strongly would like to see that change, because when I think the word defund has a definition in this particular time in our history that we need to not water it down. Defund crippled our police force. It ruined families. It caused people, our men and women in blue to retire early. The word defund was used to besmirch them and ruin them, and a whole movement to basically spit in the face of our law enforcement. So when I see it used to defund something else, I'm like, no. We need to remember that word. And we need to, every time you hear that word, it's just like if someone used the term animal to describe me and Harold, and then they want to use animal to describe Big Bird. And says, no, we're going to stay with your original definition. So I think it's important not to use that word for other things because it waters down. We need to stay vigilant and remember what has happened. When's the last time when you're walking around you've seen a police officer with a smile on his face? You know, so when we use that word for something else, no, defund the police.
Well, the last time I saw a smile on a cop's face was when Judge Jeanine walked over and shook his hand.
But that's the point. If you want to cut off funding because they're biased or whatever, I'm fine with that. But this is what she is. We need to stop trying to convince people that this is who she is. This is what her brand is. And if our federal government, which is a Democrat left-leaning government right now, if they want to let that run, it's their time. They're in the office. They make those decisions. We know what they are. Trying to convince us that they're going to change her or smarten her up is a waste of time. It goes back. They made their line in the sand. Don't listen, because that's how you make changes in this country.
Look, you can't have public broadcasting that takes the side of one party or where the editorial board is almost 90% from one party. I mean, I agree. NPR has changed over the last few years. And, you know, I respect what you're saying, Tyrus, about defund and the negative context that it has. But at the same time, I think it's appropriate for this, because to take public money and to try to convince people of your side as the right side, and this CEO saying she cried out of relief because Donald Trump was not elected. I mean, you know, these people are in their own bubble. And they have created news that a lot of Americans think is news. Americans think is news when it's not. When they don't care about the ordinary American, they don't care what the ordinary person thinks. These people are elitist. They're in their own bubble. They get all kinds of money from foundations and grants and everything else because they have the word public broadcasting. They come under this umbrella of we are protected, we are fair, we are noble, when they are everything but that. And it's about time people took them down. And you can't, in the name of inclusion, and NPR's mission is to celebrate humanity by hearing every voice. In the name of inclusion, you can't have journalism of exclusion. And that's what they're doing. And you know what? It's about time the rug was pulled out from under them.
Use that word, exclusion.
They don't get
exclusion.
They don't get a lot of money, according to some of the data, but I think that some of it suggests that they get money from other. They get 1% of their budget. But here's the thing: when you reach a point where you are really just comfortable around a table, when everyone's just saying the same thing, and you just become and we've seen this in some media outlets over the last few weeks as they've been confronting some of these things. It gets bad. I like what this guy did. He laid out what he thought was a problem. Then he resigned. Now, to your point, Dana, something else might have been getting ready to happen. But in our last segment, you have these people who are going into their boss's offices yelling with masks on their face and not really knowing what they're doing. This guy said, look, I don't support calls to defund. He used defund NPR.
Yes.
He said, I respect the integrity of my colleagues, but I can't work in a newsroom where I'm disparaged by a new CEO. So hopefully this causes some real internal conversation and even external conversation from those, even if you're a liberal and you like NPR, you should want dissent on the thing. If you're a conservative and you listen to conservative radio, you should want a little back and forth. So I applaud him for what he did. And I'm not for taking, I want, they should have to overhaul this thing. And if the money's only 1%, what difference does it make really anyway? But I hope they become, because NPR is valuable and important, and they've gone off the left side. I would agree with it. We need to get them back to what it was when I was in law school and
But the
Congress.
fact that it has the nomenclature of public broadcasting, they get funding and they get money and grants because they're seen as public broadcasting. They get tax benefits. It's not just about the 1%. There's all the corollary
So I
benefits.
hope they fix it. I don't want to see him go down. I want to see him fix it.
Okay, and Harold and the judge will continue to argue in the commercial break.
No, we just agreed.
Ahead on the 5. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.